Life with brain injury is messy. It just is. There are so many pieces of living with brain injury and concussion, so many different symptoms. It affects our identity. It affects our sense of self. There's so many doctors, so many therapy options, so many prescriptions, so many appointments. It is just overwhelming. Not to mention our daily life tasks, relationships, just even trying to take a shower and do the things that you have to do, man, it's hard. And I speak from experience as a survivor. It's hard to make sense of the messy. And so that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. I am so excited to share that Natasha Wilch is here. And she is a physical therapist and a concussion specialist. And we're going to be just talking about making sense of the messy. So I'm glad you're here. Thanks for listening, and let's get started. Hey friends, welcome back to Hope Survives podcast. Thank you so much for being here and for listening. I am thrilled to be back with another episode, and it's called Making Sense of the Messy. The messy through brain injury. And oh boy, do I feel that with my own journey with my TBI and multiple concussions through the years and setbacks. And so I wanted to start this episode by sharing with you guys. The reason there hasn't been episodes for a couple months is that I had an unplanned break because I got COVID in June. And getting COVID actually caused a flare-up of symptoms that I had not experienced in a long time. I have dysautonomia, which you may know from listening to previous episodes, and my doctor thinks it flared up into like full-blown POTS, going from seated to standing, getting so dizzy and lightheaded, and really low blood pressure, struggling with my words, cognition, really intense fatigue. Like I'd wake up and all I would do is maybe have breakfast and do a couple of dishes, and I'd feel like I had to take a nap that early, like 9:30 a.m., which was definitely not where I was at before having COVID. And so one of the other main issues has actually been my right side. After my first TBI, my right side atrophied, and it's always been a bit of an issue. My right knee reflex hasn't been working as well, and most notably, my right hand. I've been struggling with writing. There are some days and I can't even write with a pen or a pencil, and playing the piano has been very, very hard. And, you know, when you have flare-ups, and I have been improving slowly. I do want to say that. I've been improving. It's been almost 3 months since I tested positive and negative once I got better after that week. Well, I say better. So to say, wasn't contagious, but the COVID, long COVID or whatever, has still been affecting me, obviously. But, you know, the invisible part is frustrating, as well as the setbacks. You know, I've been improving enough to be able to come back to this podcast, but I'm having to be really intentional about my energy management, really intentional about my schedule, really intentional about leaving margin for more rest than I think I need, and also really intentional on my mental health and my spiritual health, because when you are dealing with symptoms, and this is something we're going to talk more about in this interview today, but dealing with symptoms affects your sense of self. And it's really easy to allow it to be so overwhelming that you kind of lose yourself in it. And I don't want that to happen to any of you, but if you are there, I just want you to know, like, I get it. And I'm going to give you a hug with my voice right now. That if you have felt like you've lost your sense of self through brain injury, like, I'm so sorry, but you're also not alone. And you're still in there. You're still you. And you will get back to it. It might look different. It might take longer, but you need to go at your own pace. And so for me here with this podcast, I had to take an unplanned break. I had just brought back season 3. If you listen to this regularly, you'll know I had just brought back season 3, and with no warning, episodes just stopped. This is why. So I'm finally able to come back, and I'm so grateful to all of you. I want to give a special shout out to one of our listeners, Lisa, who came to a concert I did in July. If you remember a couple episodes back, I interviewed Lindy Boone-Michaelis, who founded the TBI organization Ryan's Reach. And Lindy flew me and my sister out to California to do a brain injury awareness concert for her organization. Now, I was in the middle of a flare-up, and at that concert, this has not happened in years. My right hand would not play the piano for one song, and I had to stop. And I had to take a deep breath. I had to shake my hand. I had to just calm down my heart rate and try again. And I still didn't play the song right, but I at least got through it. But it was it was a little overwhelming, but I was really grateful. The concert was great, and it was great to be there. And thank you we had some other listeners come out too. Thank you to our members of our support group as well. But Lisa, sweet Lisa, wrote me a note about how much this podcast has helped her to discover what was going on with her TBI. And I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and it just makes me cry to see that again. And Lisa, I've told you this, but you'll never know how much it means to me to hear this, because when I first had my TBI, I did not have a podcast to listen to. This was 2007. There were no resources online for brain injury. It just didn't exist. And to hear that this podcast has helped even one person to find solutions and root causes on their journey, it just makes so much, it makes my heart just explode to know that, because I know what it's like to lose hope, and I don't want you to ever feel hopeless. And so not only did she share, I'm not going to share anything personal about her journey, of course, but she wrote a note at the bottom, and it says, "I also want you to know it's totally okay if your episodes don't come out on a perfect pre-planned schedule. Personally, I more often than not look at your episodes as a library of topics that I have in my back pocket. I can go find what I need when I need it. I don't care if it's new or old, there is always value there." Oh my gosh. Lisa, you don't know how much I needed to hear that. Thank you. And I think I have spent too many episodes apologizing for not getting episodes out. And I kind of did that again today. But I'm going to try and be better about that, because I want to give myself grace on the journey, as well as give you guys that. So you can do that, be an example of that, sort of. But I also need to be reminded that I don't need to put pressure on myself, right? We all are on a journey, and we're all on our own time and on our own struggles and our own everything. So that's it. Today, I'm really excited. Natasha Wilch has been a guest on this podcast before, but she opened her own clinic called Symphony Rehabilitation in May 2015. She was one of the first clinics in Canada to have telehealth and virtual care before it was even really a thing. And she won Canada's Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2017 for that. She also won the Physiotherapist Leadership Award of Bridget Columbia in 2020. And she was recognized as Vancouver Island's Top 20 Under 40 Business and Community Achievement Award. So she's obviously incredible. But not only that, what I love about her is she's just willing to be vulnerable, even with her own story and her own journey. And she's not afraid to get into the messy. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. She has a lot of insight into concussions. And I'm excited to share this conversation with you. And not only that, I know people listen to podcasts later, but if you happen to be listening to this right when it releases here in September, I have a couple announcements for you. Our monthly Zoom support group will be next week on September 10th, and our Brain Injury Bible study will be on the 28th. And if you're listening to this later, go on hopeafterhenry.com. I'm hopefully still going to be doing Zoom groups, and I'd love to meet you on Zoom. Besides that, Natasha is hosting a summit called Concussion Nerds on September 21st, and I am one of the guests in that summit. If you would like to register, I have a link in the bio of, not bio, gosh, what's it called? Description of this podcast, as well as on the website page on hopeafterheadinjury.com on the page called Making Sense of the Messy with Natasha Wilch, the episode page. And if you do register for the summit based on this episode, I would love if you use my link. It is an affiliate link that Natasha gave me where it will tell her system that you found it through my podcast. And I would so appreciate you using that link if you do decide to register. But she'll share more about it towards the end of the interview and you can hear more. But man, this is going to be a good one. So all that to say, if you feel like you're in the messy, you're not alone. I am so grateful to each of you for listening. I'm so grateful to you all for being here. Do not give up on your journey. If you're struggling today, you're in the right place and you're not alone. There's always hope. Let's get started. Today, I am thrilled to welcome back Natasha Wilch to the podcast. Natasha, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me back again. Always an honor to be here.
It is so good to have you here. Can we start out by you just sharing a little bit about yourself for our listeners?
Yeah, so my name is Natasha. I am a registered physical therapist up here in Western Canada. And everything I do is in the world of concussion. I'm a concussion clinician, so I help people around the world recover from their healing or help them on their healing journeys. I mentor other clinicians around the world in teaching them how to rehab concussion. I speak internationally at conferences, trying to bring more awareness to concussion. I do virtual events to, again, try and bring more awareness of concussion. It is literally the heart of what I do. But my big thing behind it is also trying to change the culture and the conversation around it. So it's not just one thing. Concussion is such an all-encompassing thing. And I really do try to bring that holistic approach and that awareness to it. So I own a clinic here in Nanaimo, British Columbia. I have virtual platforms. I'm a mom. I'm a human who has lots of hobbies and my own journey and experiences too. So kind of high level, that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Natasha. So we've been connected for years now. I can't remember.
I don't even remember.
You've been on my podcast, I think at least twice before now.
Yeah.
And it's always great to chat with you and connect. And I remember one of the other times we recorded podcasts, we stayed on for like 2 hours after just talking. And one of the things I love about you is just your authenticity and your openness and just like your love for people and your love for the messiness of life and your willingness to like get in there and embrace that. I really admire you for that because some of the things about living with brain injury and concussion and our listeners, I think can all relate to life is messy and your journey doesn't always go the way you want it to go. And the hard part with brain injuries is, we talk about, well, you can't see it on the outside, but number two, you can't see it on the inside either.
That is so true.
Like, I'm not able to determine myself what's going on necessarily. And so I feel like the longer you live with symptoms, the harder it is to try and find the root cause. And the more that you just kind of accept this is just the way things are. So what encouragement would you have for the listeners that feel like they're in the messy and they don't know how to make sense of it?
Oh, that is such a beautiful way to frame that, by the way. And that's so true. It's, when you get a concussion, your life gets thrown a huge curveball, right? We talk about it disrupts the goals you had a lot of the times, the timeline you had for things, and all these pieces. And it really challenges you in a challenge you didn't want at that moment to have to shift and look at things and figure things out. And most of the people that actually come and see me in the clinic, it's been years. And they've either tried everything in their area and have been given that really crappy sentence of like, this is as good as you're going to get and you have to learn to live with it. Or they've lived with it so long, they're just like, I just need to learn how to manage this. And that hope of knowing or believing that change is still possible, that spark gets burnt out. And that's why I also love your podcast title, just because it speaks to like so much of what I love. We need to recognize as humans that we are never done having the capacity to change. We never reach a point, whether we're healthy in chronic illness or with brain injury, that we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, I guess this is how I have to live for the rest of my life. You don't ever have to do that. But you do have to make the choice to not live like that. I think too, the importance is sometimes in this, I'm tangenty, so if I like detour too much, let me know. When we're in that messy and we're trying to figure all the pieces out, because like you said, you can't look inside your own brain and be like, oh, it's this and it's this. And the other thing to recognize too is, because I'm all for getting to the root cause, but I should say, and when we're in a persistent space, like so when it's been months, when it's been years, it's never just one thing anymore. Right? So let me give an example. I have this amazing, all my clients are amazing. I am like blessed with like the most amazing clients in the world that come and work with me. They are epic humans. And I always feel so honored that like I get to support them and be a part of their journey because they're just freaking phenomenal human beings. But I have one client, and so she's a bit of an interesting journey with me because again, it's been years. And the one thing I'll say that happens, Cristabelle, so much is when you're in this place, you begin to lose trust in yourself. You lose trust in your body. You lose confidence in the ability to believe what it's telling you to move or do or things that the way you want to do. And so you start to, that can lead to dissociation, that can lead to protection, that can lead to strategies, whatever that needs to do so you feel safe to do that, to show up in your world. And so I had this amazing client. She's still a client. So we actually started virtually. So I did a consult for her. She's from the United States. And she showed me she emailed me like the PT plan she was doing. And this is where I always feel a bit guilty because I looked at her PT plan and we'd done a bunch of calls and I looked at her and I said, throw it out the window. I said, stop everything you're doing and throw it out the window. I said, this is nothing against your physical therapist. This plan is not serving you. And so we started from scratch with, we actually did 3 months of virtual coaching and then she came to see me. So we started to work on this foundational aspect for her too. And then in the session, part of what I did in the session was really, this was getting to a bit of that root cause. So the big question when we're looking at this is, why do you not know where your body is in space? Why is the right side of your body feeling weaker? Why are we always dragging or tripping over that left foot, right? We want to figure these things, we want to figure these whys out. And that's where connecting with a clinician like myself or someone who does that very that full systems approach and takes a full integrated approach lets us get deeper. Because when someone comes and looks, and with this person in particular, we look at the visual system, we look at the vestibular system, we look at your somatosensory system, we look at your neck, we look at your autonomic nervous system, we look at your anxiety, your depression, your moods. We also look at your lifestyle, your habits, your tools. We look at everything.
Yeah.
And from a physiological perspective, if your body doesn't know where it is in space, then how can you trust necessarily all the inputs that are coming in? Because you're always almost second guessing yourself.
That's so good. I feel that in my soul. Like I feel that in my insides. I love what you were talking about dissociation and not trusting your body, not trusting yourself. I feel that like I'm currently in a flare up.
Mhm.
I was telling you before we started, and I've probably told the listeners by now in the intro of this podcast, that I had COVID in a couple months ago. And I have been very, very, very flared up since then. But something that I realized this week is that I am so used to living and functioning out of unhealth because I have to work. I have to do the dishes. I have to take a shower because I smell. You know what I'm saying? Like I can
Yeah.
only push that off that long. Like I have to do these things. And it's like my body is telling me, like, I don't know, I don't want to, I can't, I don't know. And I'm so used to ignoring
Mm.
that I push myself and then I crash, right? And it's like, so, and I just got married and he has learned he can't leave anything on the edge of the counter. I've broken so many things since we got married because he's used to living by himself, right? So it's like, and like one of them was like, he left his electric razor on like the edge of the sink, and we have a small house. And so we don't have a large bathroom counter or anything. And like, I like hit it with my arm walking by and
Bye-bye razor.
broken. Thankfully nobody got hurt. It wasn't like,
Yeah.
sharp or anything, but like I really struggle knowing where I am in space, and it affects those kind of things, and that can affect relationships. And then I feel bad and I feel guilty, and then it's like, oh,
But it's
well,
not
that
because you're
was
not consciously
expensive, and
doing it, and it's not your fault because it's not like you're purposely, oh, oops, hon, you need a new razor now.
yeah. Well, and it's also like it's not his fault because like
No.
he's used to like I'm not. It's not his fault for leaving it there, and it's not my fault for hitting it. It's just like it's what happened. So,
Yeah.
and we dealt with it fine. Like neither of us were upset about each other. We were like, okay, well, we just need to figure out and get you another one. But I like what you said about like when you don't trust where your body is in space, and when you don't trust the signals your body is giving you, it leads to disassociation. It leads to you just not like, because I'm actually feeling that right now. So I'm like resonating with everything you're saying.
Yeah. And I think, it's guaranteed you're not alone on this. And it's so many of my clients that come in too, right? And so that key is when you talked about like getting to the root cause, this is where that does matter, because when we don't know where we are in space, or if we're knocking stuff over or kind of those things, something's not being processed properly in our brain, in our brain. And so that is where when we can figure out, but there's like a bridge that needs to happen, is when we can figure that out and we can do the appropriate work to help make those connections so our body does start to process properly. So we know where we are in space. Then my job is to help facilitate opportunities for you to feel that in a safe, grounded way. Because I can tell you till the cows come home, and I can show you on objective measures. Like, look, it's your vestibular system is a huge piece of spatial awareness. So look, your vestibular system is doing better. These numbers are better. But if you don't feel that bridge, it doesn't matter. And so for me, it's helping to rehab. I start to see those changes, and then I create opportunities for you to get back in your body, to use that shift and that change for success so that you can feel that win, because that is when you start to trust yourself more again. And truly, Cristabelle, I just started making this connection with my clients. As a clinician, like we're always learning, right? Humans, we're always learning. And as I learn from every single patient I work with. And I just started making this connection more, I'm going to say in the last, like really strongly, probably in the last like 6 to 12 months. And since I've had this in the back of my brain consistently, I have had clients message me back that they're like, Natasha, I'm like rolling around on the floor with my puppy. And like before, I couldn't even move my head separate from my body, or I wouldn't even rest my body weight on my arms. Or like I went to the gym and I did box jumps and I didn't even freaking think about it. I just did it. Or like I was terrified that I was going to lose all my progress, but my walking has stayed and I'm walking like normally and not needing my walker. And like I had another client who she wanted to try cold plunging. And so we got her in her body. I escorted her, like we went into the lake together at 7:30 in the morning before her clinical session. And I coached her through how you do cold water immersion in a warmer body of water to start, because putting her in cold would have been way too much. And I get a message on Instagram of like, I felt so connected to myself because here's the first place I did it by myself now that I had the courage to do it because you showed me how. Like the changes that my clients are sharing in being connected to themselves in their life, once I kind of had this piece in the back of my brain more, has just been amazing.
I like the word courage that you used because so many times we get so tired of everything that the bravery it takes to think things could get better, or to hope that things could get better, or to try yet another test or whatever it is. I don't think people talk enough about how hard that is, to hope. And then also, if things have gotten better when you have a setback, to try again.
Yeah.
And to because that's the messy, right? Like
That is messy.
I like how you, when you were first starting to share, you said, hey, once it's been long enough, it's not really going to be one thing that is causing it. So can you just practically lay out for our listeners, like, what are some examples? I know this is hard because everyone's different, but what are some examples of things it could be, or combinations of things that could be exacerbating prolonged symptoms in people who've had concussions?
Absolutely. So again, we'll just kind of go down a bit of a list and I'll like the common things I see. So obviously, if there's prolonged concussion symptoms, like we want to make sure the physiological part, so the part we've kind of talked about with the systems and the integration of information, is key. Like that is still my, I can't not address that part. So that's one piece. But then we really do have to look at other components of, so if I break it into like lifestyle habits would be ones, like what are our routines like if we have them? What are the choices we're making around movement and the type of movement we're doing and can do? What are we looking at in terms of how is our sleep? How is our nutrition? Shifting out of that into, people are probably so tired of the word mindset, but like mindset is key. But I take not just mindset, but it's how do we speak to ourselves? How do we look at that messy situation? And what is the narrative we create around that situation in our heads? Are we choosing to see, and again, I say choosing, even though like it takes conscious effort to reframe your thoughts. But it's like when we're in that messy, are we seeing the negative, the pessimistic, the hard, or are we seeing the glimmer? And this doesn't mean, it's not, when I say that too, it's not that you have to be positive all the time. Like that's an unrealistic expectation and it's unhealthy. It's, I want you to be able to acknowledge and feel the emotions you feel and not get stuck there. Yeah. But if you also continue to ignore the anger and ignore the grief that absolutely comes with it, then that is going to build and fester. So people who haven't worked through unresolved grief or frustration or anger around this too, like that's going to build up. Like that needs to be moved through from an emotional capacity, right? Then it does shift to things like, then we'll also look at like who are you surrounding yourself with? Like what are the other, truly it's like what are all the inputs into who you are as a human? Because every input has an impact. And so that's why for me, like I have clients who the physiology piece is great and we do great things. I have clients, Cristabelle, who I have come in and I do my assessment. And this is where I say, if you look at my Instagram bio, I say I blend science and spirit. And I had this client and we did the assessment and she came in to her third session that day. And I looked at her and I said, what do you need? Because there was, all I could feel was this huge block. And if I couldn't help and figure, and I'm going to say energetic block, it's literally like, I just felt this like brick wall of energy that it was like, and it wasn't the first time I'd met this person, but I knew that if I couldn't support her, and this is where I sound so woo, but if I couldn't support her in bringing down that block, no matter what I did that week wasn't going to matter. And that was my gut telling me that. And so I looked at her and I was like, what do you need? And so we did a whole session, which is not normal in intensive programs, but we did a whole session with meditation and breath work and some energy work, and just to help her feel grounded, to help her let go of this. She'd had a lot of things happen in her life recently. So she'd built this armor, this protective wall, because you have to protect yourself. And so we used this session to honestly help break open that wall a little bit. She had the best week she's ever had. This is her second time with me. She had the best week she'd ever had.
That's a really good example, Natasha. And that's so, it's beautiful that you were able to recognize that in her, because I think that a lot of people with brain injuries, concussions, like they focus so much on the symptoms, like the headaches and the overstimulation and the, dysautonomia or autonomic problems, the vestibular, the balance, like all of these things that are wrong, that I know for me, like I start to think that I am wrong, right? So it's like, I start to think there's something wrong with me, that I can't get better, or, because it's any other type of injury, I feel like you can separate your identity from the injury. But when it affects your ability to process and to reason, and fatigue is a huge one, because fatigue and depression, I feel, are very closely linked. And
Absolutely.
The more fatigued you are, like you can start to feel more depressed, or you could have gone through something and you could be struggling with the emotional or the trauma side. And then that's affecting your ability to heal physically. Like both sides affect each other. So it's that's the messy, right? So it's like, how do we grow? And I like how you said, like, it's not one thing, right? Holistically. So for our listeners, like, if you're still struggling, you might not be able to do something about your vestibular system today. You might not have the right practitioner. You might not know where to go. You might not know exactly what to do. But what can you do today? You can do some breath work. You can sit. You can process. You can journal. You can call a friend. Like, because the more that we grow. Yeah, nature, especially.
Honestly, I have to share this because, especially because you just talked about fatigue.
Yeah.
So I haven't read the full study yet. So this is like going off what I read on the abstract, full disclosure. But there was this study that took this group of people, and their main outcome measure was fatigue, which is why this like sparked this. And they were doing like vestibular and like vision exercises and stuff, but they did them in nature. And they were looking at fatigue and being more in that nature environment. And we look at all the studies now coming out of like with like forest bathing and stuff, and truly the positive impact on just being in nature has for your energy, your health, and your nervous system. Just get outside.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like so many of these things we don't think necessarily to do, first off, right? We veg in front of the TV. And, there's nothing wrong with that every so often, but are you doing it every day, right? What are your patterns? And I think that's where, like you were saying at the beginning, let's look at your lifestyle. Let's look at your movement. Let's look at your patterns. And how does that affect where you are at, right? On a holistic perspective.
Absolutely. And it's to your point earlier when you talked about like, it's so hard to have the courage to hope again, to like try another new provider and like go in and like try and be open and optimistic when there's been these scenarios that have failed. And I have this client, it's like you're just like saying keywords. I'm like, oh, this reminds me of so-and-so. I have this client who he's an amazing man. He's from the United States as well. And the first time he came to see me, so I always get asked, do people need to come see me more than once? And my answer is that depends on where we start. Because everyone's systems are different. But this individual has been to me more than once. And the first time he came to me, it had been 5.5 years, I think, on this journey. And he had been told by everyone that, like, you just need to learn to live with this. And so we do a reassessment, obviously, at the end of the week. And he says to me, I did not know this until the end of the week. He says to me on the last day when we're doing a reassessment and we're seeing these changes and everyone's excited. And he goes, so he's like, I didn't tell you this. He's like, but I had pre-scheduled myself an email to be sent to me on Wednesday that said, don't worry, you've been down this road before. It's all right that change isn't happening. This doesn't mean it's the end of the road. It's okay. And I looked at him and I was like, wow. And he was just like, I told you. He's like, I've been down this and like, trust is hard. I'm like, no, I appreciate that. I was like, so tell me what you did on Wednesday when you got that email. He's like, I threw it out because I had to write myself a new one because change was happening. But I was like, that's the first time anyone's ever been kind of that vulnerable with, like, I've obviously had people share like how, and I can only imagine how hard it is to kind of go and talk about it again and try and do this again and have hope again. Because I think where practitioners do a disservice to individuals, if anyone ever tells you, I'll have you back to normal, or like, I'll have you back, like, no, because there's just too many factors, right? I think there's healthy skepticism isn't a bad thing. Asking questions is a very good thing. And you need to make sure that whoever you see for whatever type of provider is a fit for you. Because there's too many false promises, I think, out there. And there's too many, I'm the fix. And again, I just don't think it works that way in persistent brain injury. Like, it is that you need a team, because like we just talked about, like, it's not just one thing.
Yeah, that's so good. Thanks for sharing, Natasha, and thanks for sharing some of those examples. I feel like in my support groups that I do on Zoom, I get a lot of people that they're just like, I don't know where to go from here. They feel like they've tried everything, and then they feel like they don't have a practitioner in their area they can go to, or they feel like they've gone and oh man, it's so hard, because it's like, I want to help them, but there's only so much I can do. You know, I can encourage them to keep seeking, but everybody's on their own journey. Everyone's in their own place. But I actually saw one of my doctors last week or the week before. And with this flare up I've been experiencing right-sided problems with my dexterity, and it's just really flared all that back up a lot. And this was at our traditional rehab hospital. This is a doctor I had just been keeping up with seeing. She ended up retiring, and I was seeing her replacement. But I need this doctor because this is the one that fills out all the documentation for me. So
Right.
They don't necessarily help me that much, but they are the ones that document the disability, because for me, it's been a long-term disability that's affected my ability to work. So they are the ones who write the papers for OVR. They're the ones who write the notes for the insurance company. They're the ones who, you know, the doctor that writes down everything that's wrong with me. Right. So, but, you know, I was telling her I was having these problems, and she's like, I just don't know what to do. She's like, I guess I could send you for a nerve test, but I don't think it's going to do anything. And I'm like, I know enough to know it's not my nerves. Like, it's neurological. And she's trying to hit my right knee and my reflex is not kicking in. And I'm like, yeah, I'm obviously having, like, I don't know how to fix it necessarily, but like my left knee reflex is going and my right knee reflex is not going. That's something that I've dealt with in the past, and it's come back up. So, but she just looked at me and she just was like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, all you can do. And she's like, well, you have dysautonomia. Maybe you should go back to your cardiologist and like get like diagnosed with POTS because it's flared up. And I'm like, but what is the purpose of putting me through another tilt table test and giving me another diagnosis that I already have a diagnosis for? And so, and I sat there and I knew enough to know, well, you know, I can call Dr. Schmel, or you know what I mean? I have resources, and I know enough about brain injury to know that she just didn't know what to do. But how many other people sit in appointments And they're told, like, well, I guess you could go to this doctor or get this diagnosis or do this. But it's like, what are they going to do? The cardiologist that diagnosed me with dysautonomia, like, I did the tilt table test. I did all this stuff. He gave me a diagnosis. He said, exercise more and have salt. Like, that was the
wear
protocol.
compression.
Yeah, and wear compression socks. That was the protocol. So it's like, that's all he's going to tell me again. There's no point. So, and I'm only sharing that because, like, I don't mean anything disrespect to this doctor. I know she was doing, all she knew how to do. But how many people sit in appointments and then that doctor tells them, well, you could go to this other doctor, or you could do this other thing, or you could do this other thing. And it's just exhausting. Like,
this is going to sound so terrible. So I'm going to say kudos to your doctor for saying she doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Instead of putting on a hat and talking you down, or just saying, well, this is your next step. Like, so kudos to her. It still does not help you move forward.
Yeah. No, I appreciated that. I appreciated that.
But kudos to that piece of it. But oh my gosh, like you and so many people. And the problem, and I'm going to say this in the sense that, and this is again, zero disrespect to the physicians in mainstream medicine, because we need our neurologists. We need our cardiologists. We need our rheumatologists. Like, we need those people. They are smart human beings. They have a skill set that we need. Concussion does not fit into this cute little box that fits into their specialties. And so more times than none, someone waits forever. In Canada, you're waiting like 18 months to see a neurologist. I have no idea what it's like in the United States, but so someone waits forever to see this specialist, which is usually a neurologist or a physiatrist, because that's where their doc thinks to send them. And again, concussion does not, it's very rare that concussion fits into their box. So it turns into I can give you this medication, or it's all in your head, or you just have to live with it, or we can do Botox if it's headaches. And that's the avenue. Truly, for concussion rehabilitation, we have to be looking to those. I'm not saying, because I technically fall into mainstream medicine, but like I fall into like physical therapy. So like you absolutely need to be working with allied health providers. So your physical therapists or your chiropractors. I'm going to go add a layer of being like, find people who are trained in functional neurology, or like I have clinicians who've gone through my concussion nerds program, or right, you want people who talk about integrated wellness. But you also, this is where it's so hard, because it's like, I'm saying you have to do all this stuff, but you're trying to screen and filter with your brain injury to find support. So honestly, reach out to people. Like the amount of people that reach out to me on Instagram, they're like, hey, I live here. Do you know anyone? If I know someone in your area, I will send you their website. Mm-hmm. Like utilize the supports that you do have around you to try to send people, like my community on Instagram of the clinicians that I am like blessed to be friends with, they have the same heart as me, right? Like they want to truly help people. And I know if you send any of us a message, so basically any of the clinicians that you really see on the summit, if you were to send any of us a message, we're going to try to help. Now, that doesn't mean we can help you through Instagram, but it might be that like, if you tell me you live in Minnesota, I'm going to send you to Jer. I'm going to send you to Dr. Schmo. If you tell me that you're in British Columbia, I'm probably going to say, come see me.
Yeah.
Right. But at least I'm going to try to connect you with people who I know take that integrated approach to truly help you get the answers you're looking for.
And integrated is the word, right? So we started off talking about the messy and like how it's all together, but realizing you need to realize as the listener, the survivor of your family member listening for your loved one, this is a multifaceted thing that's going on. There is no one size fits all. There's no one practitioner that's going to help. There's no one avenue to go. And so you have to learn how to look at yourself and first of all, be able to kind of like take those deep breaths and then take those steps to realize all this is happening, but I am still me. I'm still me. Like I might struggle every day and I can't work the same job and I don't have the same friends and I can't do what I did, but I'm still me. And to be able to see through the fog of, okay, there might be a couple different things going on, but like you said, reaching out to you, reaching out to an, me. I do the same thing as Natasha. People message me and I'm like, where do you live? Okay. I had this podcast because I've sent so many people to you, Natasha, to your website.
Thank you.
We spent one Zoom group talking about you for like 10 minutes where I was telling them about, like, I'm like, well, I think she could help, and so, but it's hard to find the right thing. So all that to say is if you feel like you're in that messy, you're not alone. And there are providers like Natasha out there that can help make sense of it. And you can start the work today yourself. Journal. Start writing down your symptoms. Start taking notes on how you feel, what your movement level is, what you're doing that day, how your symptoms are affecting you. Start to collect data, because that kind of thing is going to help you to understand yourself better and help you when you do get to the right practitioner to be able to give them some really good information. But Natasha, you mentioned your summit and you mentioned your Concussion Nerds program. Can you just explain a little more about what you do and talk about your Concussion Nerds? Because I think people would like to know about that to be able to find practitioners or to know what you're doing with practitioners. And then number 2, tell them about your summit.
Okay. I'm going to add one little bit first, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
That messy and that challenge, as it can be difficult to get here in the beginning, but there is a gift waiting for you on the other side of it. There is a deeper insight into learning about facets of yourself that you never knew before, about finding joys, uncovering layers, that if you are open to that opportunity, not saying it's going to be easy, but I promise you it's also there. Concussion Nerds. So I started a program where I mentor other clinicians around the world in how to rehab concussion. So it's a 6-month program for clinicians, and I talk them through all the neurophys, and I teach them the integrated model that I do with my clients as well. My goal is to have concussion nerds all over the place. And so I think we're just in the process of, we just launched my directory. So you can search on my website for concussion nerds in your area, and we're multi-professional, right? So we have acupuncturists who've gone through the program, PTs, chiros, OTs, SLPs, because again, it is a team approach. Or you can just message me and I will guide you to a concussion nerd in your area. So the goal is to, again, up this standard of, I would say my goal is to increase the standard of the care that's being provided, because right now, the standard of care that's provided is pretty abysmal in most places. And so I want to elevate that. And so I do that with clinicians through my nerds program. The summit is, I'm so excited for the summit. And Cristabelle is part of the summit. And I shared on my stories that you're going to, pending it's a grand date, you're going to help me kick it off by singing your song, Never Give Up.
Let's do that.
I love that song. I tried to find it on Instagram the other day so I could put it to a reel, and it's not there.
It's called Not Giving Up. I think that's why.
Oh.
But also I don't know what's going on because some of my music like disappeared. I don't know. I need to fix it.
Because I searched.
But it's called Not Giving Up. Yeah.
I love that I keep making. Okay, I'm just giving you names to your song.
It's okay. I don't know if it's still on there. It used to be on there.
I don't think it is, because I searched like all your music to try to find it.
Yeah.
I'll search
I'll
again.
Have to check that.
I like literally like scoured, and then I listened to a bunch of other ones, and I was like, what else could I use from Cristabelle? Anyways, the summit is, so I have this, my big thing is increasing awareness and education around concussion, because if we can at least do that, then we can help guide people to the right places sooner. This is kind of my like baseline. And so the summit is truly meant to be a space where we can come together as community, where we can learn new tools and information about the holistic approach and the different factors that contribute to concussion recovery, and to introduce people to live practices. There's live workshops as well, that support healing. And so we have both a clinician track and a track for individuals on a healing journey, with speakers. So there's a lot of overlap between the two of them, and then there's some that are just for each track. But our live workshops, so those are all pre-recorded, so people can work through them at their own pace, because I can appreciate watching 4 hours on a screen in a row is not okay. And then the live workshops, so we kick it off every day live with me and you on day one. And then we wrap it up live together, but that'll all be recorded for people who can't attend. But then we're doing I'm so excited, Cristabelle, we're doing a live sound healing workshop with Melka Russell, and it's just going to be heaven. We're doing a somatic release workshop with Jacqueline Renee. We're doing a breathwork workshop with my own breathwork coach, the breath nurse, because those are 3 tools that in my own healing journey have been paramount and so helpful. And I wanted to, whenever I find something that I love that works for me and helps me uncover new layers of myself, I want to share that with everybody. And so this is a way to bring, and then we have another workshop too with Dr. Scotty Butcher about moving through anxiety triggers. And I can never remember the name of what he does. I'm terrible. But it's a space for us to come together. It's a space to learn information and to try these other tools that have been so beneficial to so many people in their healing that don't require a clinician. So the summit is September 21st and 22nd. I also didn't want finances to be a barrier to access. So there are both free passes and there are VIP passes as well. The VIP is obviously paid. For those on a healing journey, the VIP pass is 47 Canadian dollars. So for our American listeners, that's probably like 27 because that's how terrible our dollar is. But September 21st and 22nd, pre-recorded and live. We have some amazing speakers. You're going to see it all over my social media right now. If you see my social media, you have your link to share too.
Mm-hmm. I'll put it in the description of this podcast.
Okay. We're really excited. I've brought people together who truly are passionate about what they do in this field. And so it's also going to introduce you, the listener, to more amazing clinicians that you can have as a tool and a resource as well.
That's great. Thank you so much, Natasha. I'm excited for the summit. I'm excited to be part of it. Thanks for asking me to do it. Thanks for coming back on the podcast. And we're planning an episode where I'm going to be coming on your podcast at some point. So I'll make sure to let people know. And yeah, any last words of hope? We always end Hope Survives podcast with our last words of hope.
Just know that there's always hope. There's always the ability to change. If you look at yourself in the mirror and you decide that change will happen, it will.
Thanks, Natasha.
Thank you.
All right. You can get in touch with her with the links on the description and definitely check out the summit. Bye.
Bye.